In the latest cover story for The Atlantic, David Brooks issues a mea culpa of sorts, saying that after spending all of his adult life in the conservative movement, he should have seen this moment coming. Quote, Trump's first term gradually eroded norms and acclimated America to a new sort of regime. This laid the groundwork for his second term, in which he's making the globe a playground for gangsters. We used to live in a world where ideologies clash, but ideologies don't seem to matter anymore. The strongman understanding of power is on the march. Power is like money, the more the better. Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and the rest of the world's authoritarians are forming an axis of ruthlessness before our eyes. Trumpism has become a form of nihilism that is devouring everything in its path. Joining us now, New York Times opinion columnist and contributing writer at The Atlantic, David Brooks. David, it's really good to have you.
Good to be with you.
The top of this piece you did for The Atlantic really resonated with me. This idea of being proud to be an American because you believed in the story of America, what we do around the world, the good we do outweighing the bad, acknowledging that there is obviously bad, but that we were trying to be something of a moral authority most of the time. And that Donald Trump and his cohorts came in and just wiped all of that away. And now we are anything but that.
Yeah, the Charles de Gaulle, the great French leader, in the first sentence of his memoir, he said, I've always had a certain idea about France. And as an American, I've always had a certain idea about America. And we screw up. And it's usually because we're stupid or overconfident. It's not because we have evil intentions. And over the last 2 months now, it's been, I've watched, we've all watched Donald Trump behaving vilely to our allies, to our friends, to people in our own country. And that moment with Zelensky in the Oval Office, I was trying to think, what am I feeling right now? Am I appalled? Well, it's not only that. It's almost a grief. It's moral shame. It's just a sense of shame. And I hadn't really felt that about my country, and I hadn't really realized how much love of country, which we all have, really it ennobles our lives. And to the idea that we're now siding with Russia and North Korea and awful regimes, it's just a source of shame. And there's you wrote that little segment there where I talked about Donald Trump needing power. There's a segment in George Orwell's 1948, or well, now I'm not forgetting the name, 1984, where he says, how do you know you have power? You don't know unless other people are suffering. When you're making them suffering, then you are showing you're controlling them. And we've made Ukraine suffer. We've made a lot of Americans suffer. We've made people around the world. And now we've made Wall Street suffer, which I have less pity for, but it's the same.
A lot of folks might ask themselves, how did we get to this point? Where did this come from? And you're asking yourself this as well, although you're saying you should have seen it coming. Explain that.
Yeah, I think the first reason we're in here is because we've created a caste society where a lot of people with high school degrees die 10 to 15 years sooner than people with college degrees.
Also a great cover story you wrote for The Atlantic, by the way.
Yes, thank you. But are more likely to have kids out of wedlock. They're in pain. And so the voters, they voted for somebody to flip the table so they would have a chance of winning once in a while. The problem with Donald Trump is that he doesn't really care about those people. He's not enacting bills that would help health care for people in the working class, that would help educational outcomes for people in the working class. He doesn't care about any of that. He grew out of a subset of the conservative movement, and I was part of the conservative movement. And there were two groups in there. Well, there are a lot of groups, but one group was people who were like me, Ernest Wonky, reading Edmund Burke and Adam Smith, and supporting people like Ronald Reagan and John McCain and Mitt Romney. There was always a subset within our midst who I didn't take seriously. And they were people who went to Ivy League schools. And if you look at the Trump administration, Donald Trump went to Brown as a billionaire. Elon Musk went to Brown as a billionaire. Pete Hegseth went to Princeton and Harvard. J.D. Vance went to Yale. Stephen Miller went to Duke. They all came out of these elite schools. And they just they felt like an oppressed minority in a progressive atmosphere. And they just wanted to take it out on the left. And they had no positive vision. And I've learned over the decades, there's a big difference between being pro-conservative, having a conservative vision for what America should look like, and being anti-left, but with no positive vision. And the word for no positive vision is nihilism. And so what have they done? They've gone after all the places where they think progressives work. They've gone after the universities. They've gone after the science community. They've gone after the foreign aid community. And it's mostly about amassing power. And what are tariffs? Tariffs are a form of power. It's concentrating economic power in the White House. And if you look at some of the negotiations that Donald Trump is now doing with he's trying to get foreign countries. He's not only telling them how much to buy of our stuff, he's telling them what to buy. So it's the amassing of power in order to stick it to the man, and the man, they think, is progressive elites who they've been battling with throughout their university lives and maybe their whole lives.
So look into the future. How do we get out of this? Are you optimistic about where America is heading? Because the way that I started this segment by talking about how power is on the march and Donald Trump's trying to align himself with an axis of evil doesn't sound promising.
Yeah, I've talked myself into optimism. And I'd say that by looking at history. Look at our country. We've been through this many times before. You think the 1770s were pleasant? You think the 1830s under Andrew Jackson? You think the 1890s? You think the 1960s? In 1969, 1 year, 4,000 bombings on American college campuses. These moments we go through periods of rupture and repair, where we rupture the old system, but then we repair it. And I would just ask people to think about the closest parallel, I think, to where we are right now is 1830s. A populist narcissist is in the White House, Andrew Jackson. He's amassing all sorts of power. He's shredding the Constitution. His opposition are saying, what about rule of law? What about rule of law? It's a little like today. But then Andrew Jackson, out of his animosity and frankly, out of his incompetence, starts screwing up. And one of the things he does is he messes with the banking system of America and the early version of the Federal Reserve System. And he ends up creating a depression, which screws up the administration of his chosen successor, Martin Van Buren. So once he screws up, the entire political momentum shifts. Suddenly the people are like, what is going on here? And suddenly the opposition starts, and suddenly the political dynamic for members of his own party begins to shift. I think tariffs are that moment. You can cut foreign aid, you can cut the Department of Education. You raise car prices by $4,000 a car, people are going to notice. And so I think we are at the pivotal turning point moment of the Trump administration, unless they back off this stuff. And when you look at history, then we recover. We begin to rebuild anew. And I think we've done this before, we're going to do it again.
I love the piece. I think it's an interesting conclusion you make about a new realignment of maybe the conservative and the progressives coming together and finding some common ground, an abundance agenda, a subtle nod to an Ezra Klein book that's out with Derek Thompson. David Brooks, I'm out of time. So good to have you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good to be with you.